The massive and expansive story of Magic the Gathering has been told over a variety of sets in a variety of places. The worlds that Magic uses to tell its stories are known as planes, which together comprise the Magic multiverse. What exactly a plane is seems to shift with each different expansion. Dominaria, for instance, is a massive world with many unique regions and cities. Amonkhet, however, is mostly comprised of one location, the city-state Noctimoon. To quote an answer written by Brady Dommermuth in 2012, most planes are spheres with an atmosphere and one or more suns and moons. They resemble planets, but there is no law of physics common to all planes of the multiverse. Planes can be infinite expanses of matter, tiny specks of empty space, or logic-defying inversions of normal reality. A plane can contain an entire, sprawling universe or nothing at all. From Dominaria to Strixhaven, the story of Magic has taken place in a variety of settings, many of which we've come to revisit several times. Others, however, haven't been seen in a long time. These planes can be considered forgotten for a few reasons. Some of them have been replaced in favor of worlds that were better received by the player base, where others have only been introduced in small cameos and have yet to make a true appearance. Today I'd like to share a few of these, and talk about some of the forgotten planes of Magic the Gathering. In 2009, Wizards of the Coast introduced a new way to play the game. This new method was known as Planechase. Releasing as a set of 4 decks, Planechase seeks to create the feeling of being a planeswalker, dueling your opponents across a myriad of different planes and encountering all sorts of strange phenomenon. Each of the 4 decks contains 10 large cards depicting various planes from the world of the game. The core of the game was these new oversized cards, which you would draw from a special deck that changed the way the game is played, either as a benefit or as a hindrance. There are 78 plane cards spanning across 43 planes. Many of these cards reference places that were notable locations in the game, such as Ravnica and Alara, and have been the setting for countless cards. Some of these cards, however, had not been depicted in the game, and instead originated from external media, such as the Magic the Gathering novels, where others were completely created for Planechase. Planechase looks to function similar to the Future Sight set, showing us what places the game may visit next. Future Sight used a special card border to push design boundaries and hint at places and things that might be to come. A great example is Nessian Courser, which references an area of Theros years before the first Theros set. Planechase focused more on what these future worlds might look like, as opposed to the cards that might be in them. A good parallel to this is Kaldheim, which had a Planechase card some 11 years before finally making its debut earlier this year in the set of the same name. 2 other examples fall into a similar but ultimately different category. 2 Planechase cards, Arcos and Mongsang, represent worlds that would ultimately become 2 popular mainstays of the game. They had their names changed before release though, evolving to become Theros and Tarkir respectively. Segovia is a plane with one major defining trait. Similar to the story of Gulliver's Travels, the plane is known for its creature's small size. A Leviathan is typically known for being a massive creature, where Segovian Leviathan is only a 3/3. This was actually the card that first introduced the plane all the way back in Legends, and it would be about 15 years before the plane would be represented on cardboard again. The Hippodrome is the Planechase card representing Segovia, depicted as an arena where spectators would watch various sports. We wouldn't see Segovia again until the release of Modern Horizons. Segovian Angel again challenges our expectations for the size of an angel, being only a 1/1. Segovia is in an interesting position because while the tiny plane makes for an interesting concept, trying to build a story around that concept is far more challenging. Wildfire is another plane that has a small amount of cards associated with it. Most of the cards share the term Emberwild, in reference to the order of the same name. The Emberwild Order is a group of mages who are devoted to the Jinn and Ifrit of the plane. These spirits, in turn, help defend the mages' home of Sakata against Karavek. Wildfire shows up primarily in Mirage Block, but a few cards have been printed since that also reference the plane, even as recently as Commander Legends. Nar Isle is the Planechase card that depicts this plane, and is the only real location we've heard about from the plane. Wildfire is a very interesting setting, a sea of lava protecting a couple of sporadic castles. There is much more room for expansion than Segovia, and being home to a lot of magical beings such as Jinn and Ifrit makes it stand out from your typical World of Fire. The inclusion of Emberwild Captain in Commander Legends hopefully signals that Wildfire may return again in another set, even just in the same cameo style as Commander Legends, but for now we have no way of knowing. The last plane I want to touch on from the Planechase cards is Kyneth. Kyneth's only depiction is on its Planechase card, the Zephyr Maze. I like the design of this card, and absolutely think a plane like this is somewhere Magic needs to go. The description of a plane, as mentioned earlier, includes the idea of a logic-defying inversion of normal reality. Despite that description, I don't really think we've ever seen them push that aspect of what a magic world could be, and Kyneth has already been depicted as sort of a strange plane where our understanding could be challenged. In 2016, someone posed a question to Mark Rosewater on his Tumblr blog, Blogatog. What would be a 10 on the hypothetical plane equivalent scale of the storm scale? Ulgrotha? Rabia? This question introduced the Rabia scale, named after the plane of Rabia, which is where Magic's first ever expansion, Arabian Nights, takes place. In addition to being named after the plane, Rabia also sits at a 10 on a scale, meaning we're highly likely to never see the plane return in a standard legal set. The story of Rabia was told through a two-part comic released in 1995 and 1996. The set, of course, is based on the classic stories of 1001 Nights, and is the reason the plane will likely never return, as Wizards has stated that they don't want to use IPs that aren't their own, even if they're in the public domain. While Magic likes to create settings based on real-world events and locations, Arabian Nights is more of a copy of the stories than an adaptation for the game. A good comparison to make would be Theros. While Theros is an adaptation of ancient Greece, the stories and characters have all been changed to flow more cohesively in a Magic setting. Many of the characters in Arabian Nights are one-for-one depictions of the characters from the stories, like Ali Baba or Scheherazade. On the subject of sets high up on the Rabia scale, Ulgrotha was the plane that made its debut in Homelands, one of Magic's worst ever performing sets. The set had a very heavy gothic theme. A card like Castle Sengir is a good representation of the theme the plane was going for. One of the more notable aspects of the plane was a massive dead zone devoid of mana. This was caused by the ringing of the Apocalypse Chime, a card that was part of a group of early Magic cards known as Expansion Hosers. These cards prevented cards from their specific sets from being played, or destroyed cards that originated from those sets. The other two examples are Golgothian Silex from Antiquities, and City in a Bottle from Arabian Nights. The lackluster power on many of the cards in Homelands resulted in a negative reception for Ulgrotha, and the idea of a Gothic plane would be shelved until the release of Innistrad some 16 years later. Innistrad was far better received, and brought with it very memorable characters and cards. Double-face cards, something that's practically a mainstay in modern Magic, was introduced with Innistrad. The parallels between Innistrad and Ulgrotha are what heavily limit the plane's ability to return. The only character we've seen from the plane recently is Baron Singir, who isn't even technically from Ulgrotha. Singir was left stranded on the plane after being summoned by an unknown planeswalker dueling against another. The lackluster power of the cards in the set has greatly hindered the reception of Ulgrotha, even today. Baron Singir is the most memorable card of the set, and even he wasn't very good when it released, due to a lack of good vampires or vampire synergy. The release of Innistrad brought with it both the gothic horror feeling that Ulgrotha had sought to create, as well as strong and memorable cards, and given Innistrad's popularity, it's likely replaced Ulgrotha for good. There is a plethora of Magic the Gathering related media, be it video games, novels, or comic books. The stories of many of these mention planes that have very little representation in the game, and some have no representation at all. It's worth noting before I talk about some of the books that much of the earlier media produced for the series has been retroactively changed. Starting with the book The Brothers' War, if two books contained conflicting information, the newest source was considered to be true. In 1994, a book was published called The Pocket Player's Guide. Within the book is a short story written by Richard Garfield. Roreka's Tale is a story of a duel between planeswalkers, told through the perspective of one of their familiars. Urgamon is the name of the plane where the story takes place, and is one of the settings depicted in Planechase, on the card Truga Jungle. All of the information we know about Urgamon can be learned by simply looking at the Planechase card. The plane is known for its large mountains and lush environments. While there is little known about the plane, given that the story was written by Richard Garfield and that it's among the first planes ever talked about, it holds a noteworthy place in Magic lore. The novel Planeswalker centers around Urza and Xanthus' travels around the multiverse, running from the Phyrexians while being unable to return to Dominaria due to something known as the Shard of the 12 Worlds. Some of the worlds they travel to also have references in the form of Planechase cards. Equilor is the plane that Urza travels to learn about the Phyrexians. It's an incredibly old world, as seen in the card the Aeon Fog, which depicts mountains that have been flattened by time. The other Planechase card, Bloodhill Bastion, appears to depict a very strange city that almost looks alive. In the Spellthief comic, we're introduced to Dack Fayden and his homeworld of Fiora. 2 years later, the plane would be used as the setting for the supplemental set Conspiracy and Conspiracy 2 in 2016. Much of the two sets center around the city of Poliano and the political struggle both before and after the death of Brago at the hands of Kaya. As far as Fiora being featured in a standard set, the greatest challenge is the heavy focus on draft and multiplayer mechanics in the two sets. Both sets are designed to be drafted, and have a lot of cards that care about being drafted, or only work when drafted. One good example is Pollyanna, the High City. This land produces 3 types of mana with no drawback in draft, but has no text when put into a commander deck as it wasn't drafted. In a similar vein, Kylem was the plane created for Battle Bond, but has significantly less world building than Fiora. The only notable location we've heard of is Valor's Reach, the arena where players compete for the enjoyment of the audience. Battle Bond was a set designed for 2-headed giant variations of Magic, where 4 players compete on teams of 2, each team sharing a life total and both players taking their turns at the same time. Much like Conspiracy, the set has mechanics that are centered around multiplayer Magic, which means that Kylem being featured in a standard legal set would require reworking a lot of the key aspects of the design. Kylem has made a small appearance since Battle Bond, however. The cycle of lands started in Battle Bond was completed in Commander Legends, with art still referencing Kylem, as well as flavor text that tells us a little bit more about the way the arena works. Some time ago, I posted a question to Reddit asking people about their 3 favorite Magic planes. I compiled all the data into a graph, and while some of the results were expected, I was shocked a little regarding some of the planes people ranked among their favorites. Ravnica, Innistrad, and Dominaria were all among some of the most popular planes, but a few people made mention of the planes like Segovia, Wildfire, and Equilor. Even if certain planes may receive less attention than others, there is always some amount of support for all the worlds the game has to offer, no matter how big or small. I think it's nice to know that no plane is truly forgotten by everyone. We may just be able to return to some of them again in the future. Thanks so much for watching. I've been really excited to get this video out. It's taken me quite a long time, but I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. If you're interested in seeing more, you can always like and subscribe. I do have more videos planned, but I'm not sure the order in which they'll come out or quite when yet. So if you want to keep updated, make sure that you're subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.